Hi, welcome back to another video. And today we'll be talking about the election results from last night from the main Senate Democratic primary of 2026. Now, this was a very well, actually, this wasn't supposed to be this close of a primary, but that is what it turned out to be. There were many polls in Abdul El Sayed's favor, and it looked like, from the information we were getting at the time, that it was basically over for the Haley Steve Senate campaign, and that she was going to lose by a much larger margin than she did last night. However, that's not what happened. What happened was, early on, Abdul Al Sayed had this 11-point lead that eventually Haley Stevens was able to decrease over time, and eventually it came down to like this 1 point race, and it got very close. Unfortunately for Stevens, it was enough, and Abdul Al Sayed was declared victory at like 3 in the morning or 2 or whatever it was. I don't, it was very late. It was very late into the next day. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning when Al Sayed was declared the winner of this primary Senate race. But now he is officially the Democratic nominee by winning by such a small margin. 48% of the vote, Haley Stevens 47, and we have Mallory McMurrow sitting at only 4%. Now, it's also important to mention that we have 98% of the vote in, so I don't really think these numbers are going to go up that much, but there's still like an estimated 21,000 votes that are going to come in. So we'll see if those come in for like El Sayed or Stevens, McMurrow, or like they're divided in between. But really, these numbers aren't going to move that much. There's barely 2%. There's not even 2% of the vote left remaining. So this race is basically over. I don't really expect much of the percentages or the votes to change, honestly, that much. The 21,000 will be probably divided between each three candidates, between El Sayed, Stevens, and McMurrow. Uh, so yeah, not really much will change after this video is published, but what is clear is that Abdul Al Sayed is the Democratic nominee, winning a very small margin of 48%, and he will have to be able to appeal to voters who voted for Haley Stevens, who consider themselves moderate, centrist, more on the liberal side than the progressive side, and he's going to have to win them over. The same would have to be said for Haley Stevens. If Haley Stevens became the nominee last night, then she would have to win over like those more progressive leftist voters that vote for Abdel Sayed. But she did not become the nominee, and she has already conceded gracefully, and she has endorsed Abdul Sayed in order to defeat the Republican nominee, Mike Rogers, who was once again running again. It's also important to note that he did run last time against Elise Slotkin. He barely lost, I believe by like I believe it's by like a percentage apart. I could check real quick. Um, for last time around in the Senate for Michigan. Yeah, oh, it wasn't even by a point. It was super very close. Slotkin won by not even half a point, by under half a point, just by 0.34%, barely defeating Mike Rogers. And that is why the Republicans have united behind Mike Rogers as their Senate Republican nominee to run against either Stevens or Abdul Sayed. And it looks like he'll obviously be running against Abdul Al Sayed, and it's going to be a very interesting Senate race. But there are some interesting things to look at, as the Senate race will be key to either Democrats or Republicans, winning the Senate. Democrats are obviously feeling good that they could take back the Senate from the Republicans. Republicans are obviously very concerned and desperate about making sure they keep the Senate. Um, Much more probably than the House. The House, in my personal opinion, is probably a lost cause for Republicans, especially how unpopular the current president is. So retaining control of the Senate is a big priority for Republicans, probably number one. So yeah, and I feel like this primary, oh, not that tab, this primary is probably what Republicans want to see. Now, I'm not saying that Abdul Al Sayed winning this primary is good for Republicans. So far, we really haven't gotten any polling much. We haven't got much polling, like one-to-one head polling between Abdul and Mike Rogers. We've only gotten a couple, but not enough, and we're still fairly early. Like Abdul hasn't even been the nominee for 24 hours, so it's still fairly early, and I'm gonna need a lot more polling and a lot more data to like really say, oh, Abdul's the favorite or Mike Rogers is the favorite. But so far, I feel like I feel like from last night, the results that we got and the results that we're looking at, if you're a Republican, I feel like this is what you wanted. Like the Democratic primary voter base that voted in this Senate primary is obviously very divided, right? Mary Monroe dropped out and like early of last month, and she only got 4% of the vote as like a non-candidate. Haley Stevens has been a centrist favorite or an establishment favorite, and she got 47% of the vote. Abdul Al Sayed is a progressive favorite. He was endorsed by AOC and Bernie Sanders, and he only got 48% of the vote. None of these candidates reached up 50% as the majority of all these votes that were casted. And the vote number between all these candidates were very divided. And I feel like if you're Republican, right now you're feeling very good. Democrats are divided. Eventually, they're probably going to want to, or they're already starting to, like unify around Abdul Al Sayed. But I feel like if you're Republican, you look at you look at this voting information and you feel really good. Like Republicans have clearly like united against Mike Rogers since the very beginning, and we're in August now, and there's like less than 3 months to election day, and now Democrats are just now get uniting behind this candidate. Mike Rogers has probably already established who he is as a candidate, or still is already in the process of doing so. Abdul Sayed still has to do that. He still has to do that. Abdul Sayed has to has to appeal not just to progressive voters anymore as he already has. He's already done that. He's already won the primary, but now he has to do what Mike Rogers is probably already doing and has to appeal to like more out of his voter base. Um as of right now, I don't really think I can make a prediction on this race because it's just going to be super close. Like the polling for Abdul Sayed was so unbelievably wrong. It was so inaccurate. If you look here, it's insane. I went into this night thinking that Abdul Sayed was going to walk away with this. I was in a night shift. I was not home watching this. I thought when I got home, Abdul Sayed was going to like come out of this with a 20-point win. Every person I knew that was following this race believed that. And that's not what happened. We were wrong. The polling was so unbelievably wrong. Emerson has Abdul Sayed at 15 points. They had Abdul walking away with this by double digits, by 15 points, which would have been insane. And that's not what happened at all. And because of that, Emerson has gone from an A plus rated poll to an A rated poll. They have been downgraded because of their inaccuracy of the polling. Mitchell Research has also suffered as well. Tavern Research has also suffered as well. Every single one of these polls, except for Detroit News, had Abdul Al Sayed walking away with this. And to be fair, Detroit News had Stevens walking away with this, which is also not what happened. Haley Stevens lost this race by just a point. By just a point so far. Unless it changes, which probably it won't. So that's why I'm saying by just a point. So all of these polls got it wrong. The current results are by a point. Literally a point. Um, Detroit has Stevens +7. Data for Progress is Ellison +3. It's all wrong. All the polling is wrong, and a lot of pollsters, like every pollster here, are going to be are going to suffer because of this. They're going to be degraded, and it's not going to be good for them. Hopefully, they can improve in other elections, but it just goes further to show like the why the American public, I think as a whole, are probably not comfortable with trusting polls like this because again we were watching this election and so many people including myself were like, oh yeah, Abdul's gonna walk away with this. There was like so much information coming out and like Abdul's being favored, and Abdul's not the establishment candidate. You know, you'd think like if a candidate was going to get positive information like that, it'd be Haley Stevens, but that's not what happened. We were led to believe for weeks that Abdul was going to destroy Haley Stevens in this election, and that's not what happened at all. Yes, he won the election, he defeated Haley Stevens, but he didn't walk away with this like huge landslide. In the beginning of the night, it looked like there was a clear picture that was going to happen. He was leading Haley Stevens. I believe like 30% of the vote was in, and he was leading Haley Stevens with like 11% of the vote, or he was over 11 points. by like 20 or 30% of the vote was in, and he was leading Haley Stevens by 11 points. And it felt like that what we were seeing in polling was coming to reality. And quickly we were beginning to find out that wasn't going to happen. And Abdul Al Sayed's lead started to shriek. Haley Stevens started to catch up as more mail-in votes started to creep in. But unfortunately, it was not enough for her, and Abdul was declared the winner at 2 or 3 in the morning. So many polls were wrong. Were indeed so wrong, and it's really incredible here. Yeah, the current results have LCAD above a point. And the polling market, like the betting market odds, they were, I wouldn't say they were dead on. I'm not a fan of betting markets at all. I don't really trust them as, someone to look at them and be like, oh, we should trust these modern polls or whatever. But I mean, like, they were comfortable with like continuing to bet that Abdul Al Sayed was going to become the nominee, even though Twitter was kind of freaking out. So yeah, they were the whole night. They were steady with Abdul Al Sayed becoming the nominee, and they weren't sticking with Mallory McMurrow like at all. So, really incredible stuff here. And yeah, so the polling was very, very, very way off, and we do have a lot of voting data here to look at. Obviously, right now I have put in Wayne County. This is a county that I believe. Wait, oh no, this is. Is this the wrong? Was that the wrong? I had the wrong county in. I apologize. I had the wrong county in. So this is Wayne County. This is a county that at the beginning of the night, Haley Stevens was doing very, very well in. She had like over 60% in. Yeah, she was up at 60, like 64, 68, or something like that, really high up. And what helped, I believe, Abdullah Sayed to win was once all the mail-in votings came in. Eventually, we had that election day surge come in for Abdul Sayed. He was doing very, very well with election day voting, and Haley Stevens was doing very well with mail-in voting or mail-in votes. And because of that, Haley Stevens was able to get up here to like 60, 68% or something like that. And eventually, she kind of peaked out. And the election day voting started to come in. And Abdul Al Sayed was at like 20% or something here, and he was able to climb up to 45%. um, he was not able to obviously win this county, but he was able to crawl up. Um, a big question I think that's going to come in here is like obviously you see Mel McMurrow here with almost 10,000 votes. She's got 9,200 votes here, almost 9,300. And she's got 3% of the vote in this county, and she's not even a candidate. It'd be interesting to see uh what this election would have looked like if you took away Mallory McMurrow off the ballot and like all these votes, because there were so many like of course there's Dearborn, right? Dearborn, Abdul did so much well, but there were so many counties that, let me get out of this, oh my goodness, there were so many counties that like Abdul won or Haley Stevens won that I was so fascinated with, because like Melly McMurrow got some votes no matter what. Like, look at this. I just pressed on a random county and Melly McMurrow has 30 votes, right? You go on anyone up 23, 14, doesn't matter. She's on there, 18, 30. So I think there was probably a voter base that was going to support Melly McMurrow despite her polling collapse, and they were still voting for her, even though she wasn't candidate. It's a very small amount of people within this primary election, but they were voting for her. They were probably people not comfortable with Haley Stevens or Abdul Sayed, and they wanted to vote for Melly McMurrow, even though she wasn't a candidate, or they were like voter protests or whatever. So I just found that very fascinating. But yeah, this is a primary election that took place last night, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes down. Again, I bring up that the last Michigan Senate race was very, very close. It was a nail biter, and Mike Rogers barely lost. Slotkin barely won. And so I think we could see this happen again, probably. Abdul Sayed obviously is going to need to really, really position himself on what he believes, not just in the Democratic Party, but like continuing pushing his platform. Right, he supports Medicare for all, um, no military aid to Israel, progressive stuff like that. Haley Stevens has already endorsed Abdul, and that's good. You're probably going to see a lot of establishment figures probably back Abdul Al Sayed to establish unity for the Democrats in Michigan in order to defeat Mike Rogers, because they don't want a Republican in there. So we'll see. Republicans will probably, try to establish that like Abdul is some sort of like, crazy lunatic guy that's backed by Bernie Sanders and you don't want to vote for him. So Republicans are already unified behind Mike Rogers and they won't have any trouble with that. But it will be very interesting to see how this goes. And as of right now, again, I really struggle to make a prediction on how this race would go in November, but I feel like if you put a gun to my head and you ask me, who is it, Abdul Sayed or Mike Rogers or some dark third party candidate, I tell you right now, I'd feel like the momentum right now, like the vibe I'm feeling right now, I think Abdul takes it, like by a very, very close margin. Now that can change. We need to wait for more polling. Again, I know it's polls. Like this primary race has showed us that not all of them can be obviously trusted. But I try to trust high-ranking polls, even though some of them were clearly wrong in this primary race. So we don't really have much polls, but as of right now, like for vibes, not through information and data, but for vibes, I feel like Abdul Sayed um, is kind of the favorite right now, especially how he's come out of this primary. Like Haley Stevens had millions and millions and millions of dollars backing her campaign, and it wasn't enough. I believe it was like 80 million or $60 million that she burned through to try and defeat Abdullah Sayed, or that was donated to her campaign or funded or whatever, and it was not enough. She still lost to a point by Abdullah Sayed. It was super super close, but Abdul Sayed became the winner. And so it's going to be very fascinating to see how this race goes. And I am very excited to see the debates. I believe Abdul has challenged Mike Rogers to about 5 debates at this point. I don't think Mike Rogers has responded. But we'll see. I'll try to make more videos, keep you guys updated as much as I can. I'm so sorry for the lack of uploads. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.